Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I've got a box set for you. A box set of very unusual science fiction movies that came from a country that no longer exists. And I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about East Germany. And this box set from Eureka is a banger. It's called Strange New Worlds Science Fiction at DEFA. And DEFA was the state film corporation between 1946 and, he said, looking up his notes, basically the fall of communism. When the wall came down, DEFA dissolved. But since 2019, all of DEFA's product has been made available for licensing, so physical media copies of it could be made. And this box set is really, really interesting. It's not science fiction as Americans know it. It's science fiction that comes from, and brace yourself for this because it's going to shock some people, a utopian socialist perspective. All of these movies are in a post-antagonistic future where socialism is won. It's very multicultural and multi-ethnic, and the stars are open for humans to explore. It's a little bit like Star Trek without the American stuff. You get the lovely slipcase there with it. And there are a lot of extras on these as well. Each individual movie has extras that contextualize the film and the world in which it was made. And for me, they're really interesting. They don't have a plot in the same way that American films have a plot. There's not a lot of kind of antagonism between ideologies or antagonism between groups the way there is, say, in an American spy movie or an American Western or in something George Lucas made 50 years ago. They're kind of optimistic, but they're optimistic about a political belief system with which many people disagree. And the box art on this release is fantastic. I'm going to go more into the movies in a moment, but I just took a look at this and I just looked at this again, and the box art is fantastic. There's one side of it with the spaceship from the first movie. There's the other side of it. I really love the box art on this. It just works for me. The movies are from 1960, The Silent Star, which is a Stanislaw Lem adaptation based on his novel The Astronauts. Most people know it as First Spaceship on Venus, and I've covered it on the channel before. For 1960, the production values on this are mind-blowing. There's a movie from 1970 called Signals, a space adventure. Then there's and then there's one I have trouble pronouncing for some reason, Eolomea. And then another one from 1976 called In the Dust of the Stars, which for me is the cherry on the cake. Inside, you get alternative artwork again. This one has just one disc with The Silent Star on it. I've looked at this one, even though I'd only seen the movie a few months ago. But I looked at the quality of the reproduction of this one, and it's fantastically good. There's been a lot of preservation done on the DEFA archive, and these movies are crisp as hell. In the other box, you've got In the Dust of the Stars on the alternative cover art there. And on this one, you get one disc with Eolomea and Signals, a space adventure on one of the discs. And the other disc has In the Dust of the Stars. But there's more. Get a booklet as well. Love getting a booklet with information about all of the movies and all of the details about them. There's an introduction by Marina Ivanova called Alternative Futures, an introduction to DEFA's utopian cinema. I'm not going to show you that because it's got a naked lady on it. And there is some nudity in one of these films, which I was utterly delighted by. There's another essay called Blockbuster to B-Movie, Making and Breaking of the Silent Star by Sebastian Heiduszuk. And I'm mispronouncing it. I do apologise, Sebastian. Sonia Fritchie has another essay called Space Adventures in 70mm, Signals and Eolomea, Counter 2001 and Solaris. So I was comparing and contrasting Solaris in 2001 and these movies. There's another essay by Evan Torner called Deep Space Mine, Experimentation, Liberation, and In the Dust of the Stars. And there's some original publicity art as well. So you get a lot of stuff in this. So now you're going to ask me what DEFA stands for, and I'm going to put on the screen what it stands for, because my German pronunciation is pretty basic once I get past currywurst. So we'll start with 1960s, The Silent Star, East German-Polish co-production, in colour, based on a 1951 science fiction novel, The Astronauts, by Stanislaw Lem, directed by Kurt Meissig. I'm not going to tell you about the actors because most people don't know the actors. I'll read the blurb from Wikipedia. After finding an ancient Longberry flight recorder that originally came from a spaceship apparently from Venus, a human spaceship is dispatched to the Morning Star. You know about the Morning Star and the Evening Star. When Venus is the Morning Star, it's Lucifer. When it's the Evening Star, it's Hesperus. The crew discover a long-dead Venusian civilization that had constructed a device intended to destroy all life on Earth prior to the invasion. Before they could execute their plan, they perished in a global war. Movie set in 1985 and a couple of years afterwards. They find this flight recorder, which is on a big crystal, and they decipher some of the stuff from the flight recorder and decide they're going to send people to Venus. They send an expedition to Venus, and it finds the remains of this civilization, which was intending to blow the crap out of Earth, but didn't get a chance to because they had a global war starting. And they find leftover artifacts and leftover life forms after this nuclear blast. And the production values in The Silent Star are fantastic. Don't know if the sound's been bad until now, but it's now being fixed. Hopefully we're there now. The production values on The Silent Star are fantastic. The rocket ships look great. The costume designs, the interiors of the spaceships look fantastic. There's a lot of location shooting on Earth in the hills and mountains of Germany, which look great. The actors themselves, the acting is fine, and there is a multicultural spaceship crew as well. They have Yoko Tani, the Japanese actress, who turned up in a movie called Invasion, made in England in the 1960s. And they have a black crew member, so it's very multinational. And the idea behind it is that in some way, socialism won the Cold War, and by 1985, all the nations of the Earth are cooperating with one another in order to leap forward in science and technology and civilization in general. If you can't handle that, you're not going to like the movie. But if you can just kind of put aside your own preconceptions and let the movie have its own world, you're going to do fine. Just a fantastic looking film. It doesn't look like any film that came out of America at the time. In 1960, science fiction space operas were very rudimentary in America. Yeah, they had monsters, and we had This Island Earth, we had Forbidden Planet, of course. We had It Came From Outer Space. But the production design and the ideas behind The Silent Star are just that bit ahead. Kind of like Russia was with the space race in 1960. They'd already done Sputnik before the Americans, and they were about to put Yuri Gagarin into orbit. The Silent Star works well. If you can possibly avoid it, don't look at the American chopped up version of this. Go for the version that is in this box set, because it's complete and there's a lot more interesting stuff, and the character interactions are a lot more filled out, and we understand who the characters are a lot better than in the American version of it. And the English dub runs 79 minutes and the full version is 93 minutes. So you might as well get all the bang for your buck. Then we get onto a movie I knew nothing about called Signals, A Space Adventure from 1970, which kind of works. A lot of it's set on spaceships. Signals, A Space Adventure doesn't have much of a footprint on Google in English. But here's what I got from IMDb as a précis. In the middle of the 21st century, a spaceship loses its bearings, and the commander of another space crew, seemingly on a routine check flight, decides to investigate. So basically, a spaceship collides with some meteoroids, is broken into several pieces, and the crew takes refuge in one of the pieces, and they're lost in space, essentially. Meanwhile, another spaceship, which is on an interplanetary trip, diverts to try to find the people and rescue them. And one of the people on that second spaceship, his lover, is on the first spaceship. So you've got the people surviving in the wreckage of a spaceship, and then you've got the rescue crew who didn't plan to be a rescued crew, but ended up trying to find this spaceship, not knowing whether everybody was dead or not. and hoping that they are. There's a lot of speculation about whether the people are dead or not, and there's a lot of speculation on whether they should bother looking at the wreckage or not. So you've got all of that kind of interpersonal tensions. There's no real conflict between people. There's just disagreements about what to do in a way that's kind of very... It's not a pissing contest between individuals. It's, I have this theory, here's my evidence for this theory. I have this theory, and here's the evidence for mine. And so it's very intellectual in a sense. One of the reviews on IMDb says, a poor man's 2001. Because it's set in space and something goes wrong, of course it's got to be compared to 2001. But Signals is a thing of its own. Unlike Kubrick's 2001, the characters matter. Kubrick was mocking the space race and mocking the American efforts to get into space and go to the moon. He didn't particularly care about science fiction. He just wanted to thumb his nose at it. But of the 4 movies in this is kind of the lesser one. It's very basic. There's a very straightforward through plot on it. But the special effects are good or practical, of course, because they didn't have digital special effects in those days. But the model works really well done. The production design on the interiors of the spaceships and the costumes is great. The acting is on point. It's because it doesn't have that tension between individuals very much. And it's more about, are they going to be able to rescue them or not? It's kind of low-key, but it looks great. It does what it does well. And the movie is essentially about people cooperating to be successful at rescuing other people. And there isn't particularly a lot of tension in that, but it's enjoyable while you're watching it. And with a lot of these DEFA movies, just enjoying the production design, enjoying the way they look, enjoying the costumes and the mechanisms on the spaceships and the design of the spaceships, the special effects of the planets, all that kind of stuff. This is what it's about. The production designs on these Eastern European science fiction movies were pretty bloody good, given the fact that they were from a country that's economy wasn't doing great, but they still had this urge to make optimistic utopian science fiction. And I've got to respect them for that. And Signals has some weird aspects to it, where they have this kind of socialist utopia on Earth. And you see a lot of people cross-cutting with the stuff happening in space, playing on a beach and dancing on sand dunes and playing with people of all different age groups in this utopian beach scene, which has nothing at all to do with the rest of the film, but it looks good. And it's got an exuberance about it, which balances off the quiet and internalized stuff on the spaceships. It shows people want to get back to Earth because Earth is a fantastic place where you can go for a holiday on the beach and throw somersaults and walk on your hands and do all sorts of weird stuff in a socialist utopia. So they show you the utopia and then they show you the frontier of that utopia in a kind of odd way that doesn't necessarily mesh well, but it is what it is. Then we get to Eolomea. Eolomea is a high production movie. It came out in 1972, so it wasn't made as early as The Silent Star in 1960, or Signals, which was on a much lower budget. And I've actually said it right there the first time. Great. 1972 science fiction movie, based on a book by Angel Wagenstein, about whom I know absolutely zero with the rim removed. We have a space agency and we have a space station called Margot, and there are a number of spaceships that are disappearing when they're out in space beyond Margot. And ultimately, 7 spaceships disappear mysteriously with a total crew component of 60 people. The scientists back on Earth have to try to figure out what's going on, and the scientists on Margot just don't know what happened to these people. The main scientist is a young woman, and her former lover is stuck on a space station on an asteroid. And he is going through his own stuff. He's been there for a year now. He's on this space station with only a crotchety old man with him, and they're kind of hitting the booze a little bit, reminiscing about being on Earth. They're grumpy to each other. Meanwhile, the woman on Earth, whose name is, I've got to give you the character name at least, Maria Scholl, Professor Maria Scholl, is in conflict with another scientist, an older scientist, who thinks that the spaceship blew up with an antimatter explosion, he says. And there's actually a plan to do something with the spaceships. And so Maria Scholl, her ex-boyfriend Daniel, who's on the space station, and the other scientists called Professor Ollie Tull, all have their own agendas and their own things going on. And ultimately, there's a resolution to the mystery. It doesn't have the kind of pat resolution you might get in an American science fiction movie, or an English one for that matter. It's got this will continue kind of ending to it. And I'm cool with that. I like the fact that they've got a strong female character in the lead who is a scientist and a respected scientist and has authority in the space agency. So there's a lot of that socialist egalitarianism there where nobody questions it. She's very good at her job, so she does her job. You got that kind of thing, which plays really well to a modern audience. You got to remember that the sexual politics in a lot of American science fiction movies of the time, and in English ones as well, wasn't as even-handed as these socialist utopian movies were. And that makes them fascinating from our viewpoint. They're very forward-looking. Special effects are great. There's a really funky-looking asteroid that Dagny is stuck on, which is really great. And there are flashback sequences to when he and Maria were falling in love at a resort, where he's taking a break from being an astronaut and she's taking a break from her duties. And they kind of fall in love at this seaside resort. Seaside resorts are very big in these movies. And the chemistry works and their relationship works, even though ultimately it doesn't have the pat kind of romantic ending that an American science fiction movie would have. I really enjoyed it. I love the special effects. I also love the fact that they do give you some landscape stuff in the same way that they do in Signals. Getting off the spaceships and giving us a little bit of location shooting really works as a breather for space operas, and I think it should be done more often. So Eolomea is interesting. The resolution is interesting. What they're actually planning to do with the missing spaceships is interesting, and it works for me. Then we get to the weirdest and the most interesting of the films, In the Dust of the Stars from 1976. It was directed by Gottfried Kolditz, and it's really odd, and it's really crazy, and it looks fantastic, and is funky as hell. It's kind of like Space 1999 on acid, in the best way. There's a spaceship called Sino, which doesn't necessarily come from Earth. It comes from another planet where humans live. It's received a distress call from a planet called TEM-4, and the crew try to respond, but they don't get any answers back. So they land on the planet, and the crew, which has 4 women and 2 men on it, again, you've got that sexual politics coming into this, land on the planet, and they're brought before the kind of second in command of the planet, a guy called Ronk, who tells them, there wasn't a distress call from our planet. We're not in any trouble. We're doing okay. And then they take all the crew but one of the male crew members who stays behind on the spaceship back to their city, where they have this really wild party. There are scantily clad women dancing. There's weird food and drink. There are giant pythons just lolling around the food tables and around these ornamental sculptures and things. They give the people from Sino food and drink and basically drugged them. They get fud drugged at this party. And they also have their minds twisted a little bit so they forget certain things that they see. And they're sent back to the spaceship. And the guy back there who stayed behind is going, huh? And he realizes that they're all a bit fud drugged. And the captain of the ship, a woman called Akala, is the lover of Suko, the guy who stayed behind. And he realizes something's wrong and he has to try to deal with it. And the crew eventually find out that the people in the city aren't the original inhabitants of the planet. They've only been here for about 30 years. And they've enslaved the inhabitants of the planet so that they can work in underground mines and extract a mineral which is valuable to their home planet. You got that slavery aspect of it, which is a kind of coded thing for capitalism. And the people from the Sino make contact with the enslaved people and try to help them defeat the rulers of TEM-4 in order to get the planet back and make everything hunky-dory. This movie is really complex in some ways. And they find out the chief, who is the guy above Ronk, who runs the planet. And he's played by a really interesting actor, a guy called Eckhard Schall, who in East Germany was known as the foremost actor to act in the plays of Bertolt Brecht. Threepenny Opera, Caucasian Chalk Circle, Arturo Y, all of those Brechtian plays. He was the GOAT when it came to doing adaptations of Bertolt Brecht. In fact, he married Bertolt Brecht's daughter and was married to her for a long time. And so he's like this serious, hardcore theatrical actor playing a mad ruler of an alien planet who changes his hair dye every 10 minutes and is as mad as a cut snake, which is apt because there are a lot of snakes in this movie. So you got Eckhard Schall, who is kind of disturbing as the ruler of the planet. He has odd recreations. He doesn't like people saying no to him. And he looks really friggin' weird. And when I looked more into the actor, because he was really interesting in the role, and then I found out all the Bertolt Brecht stuff. And went, yeah, that fits. He's a very Brechtian character in this movie. Over the top and didactic and crazy as hell. And I like the fact they got an actor with such cultural cachet to play in a science fiction movie. Now, there is a fair bit of nudity in the film as well. Not to the point where it's distracting, but we see a couple of the women on the spaceship. One of them does a naked dance. And this is the 1970s, so there's not neotenous lady bits with no hair on them. Let's just put it that way. I appreciated the stylishness and the classiness of the nudity in this film. And being a child of the 1970s exploitation era, I have less trouble with gratuitous nudity in films than many other people do. But it is tasteful. It is lovely. And I think it should have happened more in more science fiction movies in the 1970s, to be honest with you. Logan's Run would have been better with a lot more nudity in it, for instance. In The Dust of the Stars, there is a battle between both sides. There's an attempt by the rulers of Temfor to flood the area where the spaceship is in order to make it tip over. And there's an uncertain ending to the film. It is a bit odd. It isn't as pat and put together and complete as the ending would be in an American or an English science fiction movie. But it kind of sat well with me. Yep, that happened, and something else happened on the ground. I'm okay with that. I would have liked to have had a sequel, because this movie has a lot of beautiful stuff in it. I'm not just talking about naked ladies. I'm talking about the production design, the set design, the costumes. They used a volcanic region in Romania for the location shots. And there are some weird volcanic mud plains where a lot of the film is shot from the planetary point of view, which makes it look a lot different than a lot of the locations you get for other science fiction movies. And the acting is very good. You come to care about the characters on the spaceship and some of the people from the planet. The other part of it is when somebody dies in this movie, their death matters. There's not a lot of gratuitous killing. When one of the leaders of the slaves dies, it matters. When one of the crew members dies, it matters. And I like the gravitas that gives the movie. Of the four, In the Dust of the Stars for me is my favorite, and it's got nothing to do with that nudity. And I'm emphasizing that. It's got to do with the plot, the acting, the characters, the locations, the production design, and just the craziness of the alien city is really well done. And they just went, yeah, we're going to throw in a couple of giant pythons. We're going to throw in a whole bunch of weird looking food. We're going to have people shooting little pump sprays into their mouth to get flavors. We're going to have odd makeup. We're just going to go to town with this stuff and not worry about it. The music's going to be Eastern European disco, and we're going to run with it. And they do. And I really like that. Just to summarize, if you have the money for this box set, it plays somewhat differently to Russian Fantastica. Yes, it is a socialist movie from the Eastern Bloc during the Cold War, behind the Iron Curtain, blah, blah, blah. The East German filmmakers, who a lot of whom had worked before the war at UFA, and there was a continuity of creativity there. There's a lot of really good technicians and really good filmmakers there, and that continued into the 1960s and 1970s when these films were made. They look good. They're very different. Once you can get your head around those differences, that these come from a didactic, utopian, socialist viewpoint, you can have a great time with these films. And the extras on the discs and the essays in the booklet will help you bridge the gaps in your knowledge of it. This is one of the best science fiction releases for this year for me, because it takes me to a part of the world I'm not familiar with and shows me science fiction movies from that part of the world that are interesting and look fantastic. They're all in color. Production design's great. The special effects are good for their time. And I just loved going down the rabbit hole of this particular box set. And if you can afford it, it should be in your collection. So that's what I got for you this time around. DEFA, East Germany, socialist utopias, spaceships, a little bit of pew-pew, a little bit of naked ladies. A good afternoon spent watching these films. Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. And I'm starting to throw a few extra videos in for the people who do support the channel. And I'm going to be doing more of them in future. I've got some ideas for short videos for the patrons and the channel members as well, which are never going to be shown in the main channel because I'm mean. Next up, we've got the Monday video, then we've got the Wednesday video, then we've got another science fiction Saturday game. On the B channel, Terry Travels, I've just done a trip up into the Dandenong Ranges and paid $8.50 for a coffee, so you should watch that video as well. But until the next time I talk at this camera and talk at you, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch some Eastern European Brechtian science fiction movies. And I'll catch you next time.